Hi everybody, it's Holly. I'm going to walk you through this winter edit of a nature image that I took during an ice storm recently. Basically, I'm going to walk you through from start to finish my process in Lightroom, and we're going to go to Photoshop because I'm actually going to focus stack two images that I took together to make more of it in focus. So originally, I took this photo with this water drop right here being my focal point. So this is what is in focus. But I really loved, I chose to also manually focus on this part of the ice drops, on this part of the evergreen as well. And I would like to kind of make one image with more of it in focus than I originally took with one image. And to do that, you can do it very easily in Photoshop using a focus stacking technique. Typically with focus stacking, it's recommended that you use a tripod, but when I'm out and about in nature, I do not carry a lot of gear with me. I carry my macro lens. I kind of just shoot with what I see as I'm hiking through my yard or a park or anything like that. So I don't carry a lot of gear. So I always handhold my images when I have the intention of focus stacking. So if you do that, you have to make sure that you increase your ISO enough to have a hand-holdable shutter speed and be very still and try to keep the composition as close in both images as possible. You can see that I kind of shifted a little bit here, but that shouldn't be that big of a deal in Photoshop. The exposure is a little different though, so I will fix that. Okay, I did, like I said, I handheld this image. I shot both of these at f6.3, ISO 2000, and 1/320th of a second, which for me is fine to avoid camera shake. So let's get started with our first image. I am actually going to start by using one of my Winter Embrace presets. This preset collection of mine, I created it to be versatile to use on portraits as well as my nature images, and I really love how some of these work on my nature images. You can kind of, click through and see the different effects. This would be like a one-click type situation. I think I like the way cozy looks with this one, so I'm going to choose cozy, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what this preset does. Since I just, applied it one click, I'll walk you through exactly what it does. And if you want to follow along on this edit, I included both of the raw images that I'm using in this edit with this editing video, so you can load these into your Lightroom and follow step by step exactly what I do in Lightroom and in Photoshop, so you can kind of apply it and work through it yourself. Okay, so I applied the cozy preset from Winter Embrace, and the first thing that I'm not going to mess with my white balance. I set that Kelvin a little bit on the warm side. I shoot on the warm side. So I set that manually with Kelvin temperature. So you can choose to adjust your color temperature as you like. If you had a person in the image, you would want to edit for the skin tones. You have a little bit more creative wiggle room with white balance with nature shots. So I like the white balance overall of this image the way that I shot it in camera, so I'm not going to mess with that. So the rest of this preset, it doesn't change the exposure at all. It adds a little bit of contrast, plus 15 in the contrast. It reduces the highlights a little, which I wanted to do anyway because some of the area here, I'll probably use a brush on that. It got a little bright from the reflection, even though it was quite dim outside. The ice really reflected a lot of that light. It brought up some shadows, plus 60 in the shadows. It brought up some whites, plus 9 in the whites. Moving down, it brought down some of the clarity. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to take off that part of it. I want as much clarity in my nature images as possible. I actually add a little bit of clarity a lot of the times to my focal point when I'm editing. So I want to take that off. It adds a little bit of dehaze, which richens the color. I really love adding, you know, +5, +7 in the dehaze to kind of just make the colors just a little bit more rich. And it adds +5 in the vibrance. It doesn't do anything on this one for the tone curve, but we will go down to the color mixer, and it does a little bit of work in the color mixer. So it brings our yellows to the left -20, and that warms our yellows up. And it brings up our greens +5, which cools them down a little bit. For saturation, it brings down the yellows -20, and it brings down the greens -30. That kind of just combats any kind of neon green, overly yellow situation. I do that in a lot of my images because I like the way that works with the tones of my images. And then in luminance, it brings up oranges. We don't have a ton of orange in this, but this is probably made brighter by that. So you can kind of see, yep. So it was +15 for the oranges, and it brings down the greens -37. So when you bring down a color in the luminance, it just kind of takes light away. And if you bring it up, it brings more light into that color, so you can kind of see what it does. I like to bring down my greens especially because it really richens that color up, kind of like dehaze, but it just makes them look a little bit deeper in tone. It doesn't do this preset doesn't do anything in color grading. Luminance, it's +25. There's not a lot of noise in this image, so I'm not going to further denoise anything. And that's pretty much all that this preset does. So from here, I am going to go to my masking, and I'm going to do a select object mask, and I'm just going to go right over this water drop. This is our, this area right here is our focal point. So I'm going to zoom in on that. My select object brush selected this all very nicely. I'm going to bring the highlights down a little bit more. I'm going to use a brush for that. I'm going to bring up the clarity. And I'm going to bring up the texture. And that just really brings out, I mean, it's a little further off, so you really can't, you won't be able to tell a lot, but it does bring out a little bit of the texture in the ice. And I'm going to grab a brush, just a regular brush, and on this really white area here, it's not blown out, but it's still very, very bright. I'm going to bring down the highlights. Maybe some whites too. And I'm going to grab another brush, and I'm going to go over this darker area here. And I'm just going to bring up the shadows and maybe a little bit more exposure. There you go. Okay, I like that. Okay, so now I want to copy this whole Lightroom edit over to the second image that I am going to take into Photoshop. So with this selected, I'm going to hold Shift down and grab that second shot and then hit Sync. If I want my masks to copy over, I would select these, but I don't want that to copy over because I'll do those by hand if I need to. So I'm going to hit Synchronize. And then I'm going to go here. There was a little bit difference in exposure. So I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit just to eyeball that. Let's see. Maybe a little bit less. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now, like I said, I'm going to do my masking by hand. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to grab another mask, select object, and this is the focal point for this image. So I'm just going to select that. Then I'm going to bring down the highlights just a touch. No, I'll just grab a brush for that one too. Okay, so I'm going to add some more clarity and texture to this, just like I did on the other one. I'm going to bring up the shadows and the exposure just a touch. And then I'm going to grab a brush and do a separate mask on these areas that are a little bit bright and just bring down the whites a little bit. Okay. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to grab both of these images. I'm going to hold shift down and select them both. And then I'm going to go to Photo, Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. And then it'll just take a second and it should open both of them up in Photoshop together. Hopefully. Sometime today. My computer's running so slow. Well, that's probably why, because I had an error on there, or not an error, a notification from the last image I edited. Okay, so now both of these layers are opened as one image in Photoshop. You can see they're each a different layer in the same document. So I'm going to select both layers. I'm going to click on the top one, hit shift, and click on the bottom one. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Auto Align Layers. And then I'm just going to select Auto and hit OK. And you can see they didn't line up perfectly because that composition was a little bit off. So it left these areas, you know, the canvas is a little bit, you can see the areas of the canvas that it didn't fill. But that we will fix in a little bit. So I'm not going to do anything else to select anything. I'm just going to keep it as is and then go to Edit again and Auto Blend Layers. I want to make sure that this Stack Images radio button is selected and keep Seamless Tones and Colors and Content Aware Fill Transparent Areas. So these areas right here, Content Aware Fill, should fix up. So I'm going to hit OK. And you can see it completely stacked that image on top of each other. This right here, it did not do a good job with that, but we can fix it. Everything else looks pretty good. See, that is nicely in focus. And I can just use the remove tool to get rid of that. So that's not that big of a deal. Everything else looks pretty seamless. Just a couple areas that I need to clean up. Okay, so in a perfect world, they would have been a little bit better blend, but this is very easy to fix. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. Oop. I should hit flatten. Okay, and in these areas where it looks like it blended funny, I am just going to use my remove tool and I'm just going to go over. Now, most of the time when I use this technique, I don't have to do this at all. It is nice and seamless. But here, as you can see, I have a couple of little areas that look a little funky, so I am just going to clean it up. That right there. Okay, I think that all looks pretty good now. Up here, it obviously looks a little odd, so I'm going to crop that in a little bit closer. So I'm going to fit it to screen. I crop all my images for Instagram anyway, because that's where I share all my nature images. So I'm going to zoom it out. I'm going to hit my crop tool, and I am just going to crop it like this to 8 by 10. And that should take care of, make sure, a little bit more. Crop it in. Okay, that looks pretty good. This little bright spot right there is catching my eye, so I'm just going to take that out with my remove tool. Okay, awesome. I think that looks good. Okay, so we are going to zoom out. And the next thing I'm going to do is add my tone overlay. This tone overlay comes with the Winter Embrace collection as well. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. And I am going to, actually, hold on one second. I'm actually going to crop that in a little bit more, like that. Okay, now I'm happy. Okay, so now we're gonna add our tone overlay. So we're gonna go to File, Place Embedded, and then we'll navigate to where our tone overlays are. So I'm gonna go find my Winter Embrace collection. Okay, and then I'm gonna find my overlays. Here we go. Okay, so I am going to use Winter Tone Overlay 2, I believe. And I am going to, the light is coming in from this way. So this overlay right here, the light comes from the top. So I'm just going to use my mouse to rotate it a little bit, hit shift and pull out the edges so that it covers the entire image. Then hit return. And I'm going to change the blend mode to soft light. Okay, I'm going to hit Command T, zoom out a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to see what the other color, the other winter overlay looks like, just to compare. So I'm going to go back to File, Place Embedded. Oh, and I hid this layer so it takes that tone off so that I can see what the other one looks like. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and Winter Tone Overlay 1, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing. You can tell that this one is a bit green, so a lot of times it does make the greens look really nice. So since we already have a lot of green in our image, it might look good with the green, and then it might combat the redness in the background. So I'm going to change my blend mode to soft light. I think I like the Winter Tone 2 better, so I'm going to remove this Winter Tone 1. But I'm going to change the opacity of this Winter Tone to about 40%. Yeah, I like that. It adds just a little bit more depth and dimension without it being overpowering. So I like that a lot. I am going to now add a light overlay. So I'm going to go back to File, Place Embedded. And I'm going to grab actually the warm window light. I like to use the warm window light overlay, even though it's obviously not window light, it's regular light, because it's very soft and natural. So I'm just going to put that on, and I'm going to change the blend mode to screen. I'm going to put this up here in the corner just to add a little bit of directional light. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity of that as well to about 40%. Bring it up a little bit. Okay, I like that a lot. I'm thinking that this looks a little bit too red, so I'm going to go to a hue saturation layer. I'm just going to make sure that it's reds. Oh, it's yellows. Oh, nope, it is reds. So I'm just going to bring down the reds just a little bit. Okay, I like that. Now I'm going to add a little bit of bokeh. Okay, so I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and these bokeh overlays that come with the Winter Embrace are more like Christmas bokeh type things, and there is also snow overlays that come with it. Let's just see what snow looks like. Let's do frosty snow. This one I like to use on a very low opacity. know if I want snow in this image. Let's do File, Place Embedded, and Blustery Day. This one's a little bit more subtle. No, I don't think I want snow overlays. I think I just want a subtle, like, bokeh overlay. So I'm going to actually navigate to my extensive collection of bokeh overlays that I've collected over the years. This one I got on Etsy so long ago, I don't remember. It's called Uplift Bokeh, but I did get it on Etsy. It was relatively inexpensive, and the 26 is my favorite. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Oops, sorry, Flip Vertical. And I'm going to stretch it to the whole size of the image. And then I'm going to hit Screen. And as you can see, it's blue. And I don't want it to be blue. So I'm going to go to, with the bokeh overlay selected, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation. And then I'm going to click the Colorize button. And that kind of matches the color of the image. But I am going to reduce the saturation a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to add a mask to it, because with this particular overlay, there's some of the smaller flecks of like dust or whatever that is are a little bit darker than some of these. So I like to, with a low flow brush, I kind of like to lighten some of the areas of it so that it's more subtle, but I don't want to take off these bigger bokeh. And then I want to just go over the focal point of the image just to make sure that it's not overpowering. Bring it down just a little. And you can see that this actually works really well with the bokeh that's already in there. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so now I'm going to flatten it up. I'm pretty much done. The only thing that I like to do sometimes is I like to go to Image, Auto Contrast, just to see what it does. Oops, let me Command J to a new layer. I like that it adds just a little bit more contrast automatically to kind of make it pop. But right here, this little area, I'm going to add a layer mask and brush that off because that just made that super bright again. So I want to take that contrast off of this area. It's just a little subtle thing, probably like right there too. Okay. All right, so now we're going to zoom back out. I'm going to flatten that up. I am going to save it back to Lightroom. And then we will go back to Lightroom. This is our final edited image of these two images that were stacked together. We started here. This we added. And this is our blended image. I hope you really enjoyed this edit and learned how to focus stack and kind of saw how nice the Winter Embrace collection can be on your nature images. And also I invite you to give them a try on your portraits too. And if there's ever any image that you want to know if any of my preset collections would work on your image, then send me a message and I would be happy to apply some presets to one of your RAWs to kind of give you a little demo. Thank you for watching. Bye.